Well, if you are interested in blogging, starting a blog, or actually running a successful blog to help drive traffic to your TPT store, then you are in for such a treat today. Today we have Jennifer and Amy. They are expert blogging coaches. And if anyone knows how to help you get more traffic to your business through your blog, it's these two ladies right here. Welcome, Jennifer. Welcome, Amy. How are y'all today?
Good. Thank you so much for having us join you. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'm so excited. So, start with us here. Tell us a little bit about you guys, your journey with blogging, maybe individually, and how you guys came together to create a coaching program for bloggers.
Yeah, so clear back, I think it was about 2013, I decided to start my first blog. It's kind of a long story, so I'll try to make it short, but I had quit my job and I had adopted my daughter, and it was kind of in that situation where I need something else because I was previously a CPA and I did not want to go back to that kind of work environment with, a young child. So I was like, okay, what else is out there? And I stumbled across blogging. I had been an avid blog follower and stumbled across blogging as a way to create a business and an income, which I had not known about before. Somebody was sharing about this online. So I had this idea to start a food blog and I was like, you know what? I think I could do this. So I started my first blog as a food blog in 2013. And I eventually added a second blog onto it. And Amy and I were actually next door neighbors. And she was sharing Instagram. She had a really big Instagram following and all of that. So we kind of got together and knew that we were supporting each other. She was kind of helping me with my Pinterest and things like that. And she eventually started a blog. And so long story short, we were sitting around the table one night, this blogging thing is great, but it's hard and it's confusing. And if we didn't have each other, where would we be? And so we were like, other people are probably feeling the same way. They need help with blogging. So that's how we came together to start a business where we could help other bloggers. So I'll let Amy kind of tell you about a little more of that. Yeah. And Jennifer's being really nice talking about how that all came to be. But the truth is that it was Jennifer's idea and I thought she was crazy. And I was like, I don't know if anybody's going to pay us to do that. That's interesting, Jennifer. And just to kind of rewind, this was 2017. So today we are kind of inundated with courses and memberships and all those kinds of things. But back then we really weren't. It wasn't something that we did. So when she had this idea, I was like, I just don't know. I just didn't have the vision yet that she did. She's very much a visionary. And the interesting thing that happened was she shared this and I was like, okay, all right, this is interesting. And then I was with a friend of mine who was telling me her needs of her business. And it was exactly that quote unquote dream that Jennifer had shared. And I was like, oh, if you need help, we can help you. And she said, all right. So I get in the car, I call Jennifer and I was like, I don't know if this was your intention, but that thing that you said that you wanted to do, I have our first client and we have to help in a month. And so that's kind of how the business has been a couple different times over the years, to be honest, was realizing that there is a need in the industry and asking ourselves, can we meet it? And so that's what we did. We quickly came up with kind of a plan. We coached this business on what they needed. And then that turned into us creating websites for a while for people. And what we realized in a couple years' time was that we really wanted to empower women to be able to do this themselves. Because what was happening is you're paying a lot for a website and then they don't know how to use it. And that is the piece that's really, really, I think, important, is that you know how to run your website, you know why the things are on it, and you know why you're paying for what you're paying for. That's a really key thing. Not all of us are just rolling in cash. And so it's really nice to be able to kind of DIY it, but have support along the way, which is where we come in, is to be able to support people and say, okay, so you want to start a blog for XYZ reason. This is how we can support you and make it the most financially feasible thing that you can do, but also honoring your time and honoring where you are going for your resources, because there's a lot of noise online and we want to be the one-stop shop. If you want to start a blog, if you want to grow it, we are here to help you do it. And we have the podcast and the membership as ways to do that. But just really empowering people to be able to do that is how the business has shifted today. And it's it's so awesome to just hear different ideas that people have and what brings people to blogging. We all have different stories. It's a really cool thing to be able to witness and be part of.
I love that. Okay, so you guys work with all kinds of people. You work with teachers, you work with you mentioned earlier, Jennifer, being a food blogger, like you work with all kinds of people in all kinds of businesses who are driving traffic and creating revenue for their lives and for their businesses in a lot of different ways. So can you talk to me about some of the ways that they're monetizing their blog?
Yeah, so there's so many different avenues. That's what we love about blogging. There's so many different avenues that you can take depending on like your niche and all of that. So we see people doing a lot of different things, but some of the core things that people do when it comes to blogging, like the thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is just the simple ad revenue. So you're monetizing the content that is already on your blog. You're driving traffic to it. You get on an ad network and you get paid for the number of views on your content. So that's just such a basic and simple way. You do have to grow your traffic a little bit, so it can be a little bit more of a long game, but it becomes more of like a passive revenue as you grow. And so I think that's what a lot of people strive for, is to have that as at least one avenue of monetization. And then another really simple one that people implement right from the start that works well for so many different niches is like affiliate marketing. So within your content on your website, when you write a blog post, you can add links for things that you think would be helpful. If you were sharing about like maybe creating a sensory bucket for a preschool child, you could have a list of supplies and link to those supplies on Amazon, and you would get a percentage of that sale. So that's just a really simple way and a really authentic way to help someone and be able to create revenue. And a lot of people also create digital products. So they might sell like a PDF download, an activity sheet, a worksheet, a checklist, whatever, or maybe it's a video series, anything like a digital product. You can sell it in different ways. You can sell it on another platform and you can link from your blog to that platform. You can host it on your website and have a way to sell it there too. And then you can really expand into pretty much anything. You can create your own course, you can create a membership, you can have services that you offer. The possibilities are kind of endless. And so just really like you want a diverse way to monetize. So you want to have at least a couple, but you don't have to start everywhere. You just pick a couple things that you want to start with.
I love it. And I love the way that you guys are talking about this because in the teachers pay teachers world, I think we often think about you have a blog and you use your blog to grow your email list. And, then you also use your blog to drive traffic to your TPT store. And then you use your blog to nurture. And I know some people do also use Amazon affiliate links and things like that. But we're talking about actually using your blog and thinking about your blog as your home base. And like that's your business versus something else as your business. And your blog is just a tool to drive traffic. And I know
Yes.
thinking about it that way works for a lot of people. But if you really think about building a blog as your home base for your business, then it really opens up a lot of different revenue streams that you might have never thought of as being possible. Brand deals, even, I know I would personally, if somebody had a lot of volume traffic to their page, I would pay to have a product of mine or a service of mine advertised on somebody else's blog. So I think a lot of times as TPT sellers, we kind of get locked into this. This is the way that I've seen everybody else do it. And my blog is just a tool versus my blog could literally be the pillar or the foundation for my business that's going to allow me to diversify my income streams in ways that I never really thought possible, which is really interesting.
Mhm.
Can you talk to me about why blogging is such a powerful tool for teachers who want to build a sustainable business? In the TPT world, I think, and I'm not even going to say I think, you really have to be in probably the top 800 sellers on TPT to be making an actual income, like an actual living on Teachers Pay Teachers. And a lot of people, I think, don't realize that, but it's true. You have to break the top 1,000 sellers just to be maybe making $40,000 or $50,000 a year. So when we're talking about like replacing your teaching income, it is possible on TPT, but why could blogging be such a powerful tool to actually building a sustainable income with TPT, but also off TPT? Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think you're bringing like a really good point up here, and using TPT as just one revenue stream. Blogging, you can have so many different revenue streams. So it's kind of opening your mind to what are the other possibilities available to you as a teacher? I want you to think about this. Those of you who are listening today, I'm on the PTO at our local school. So I feel like the back end of a lot of what teachers do. And it is a lot. You have a lot of skills. You have a lot of things that you know how to do. And so I want you to think about how you can utilize those skills in other ways to not just help teachers, but help parents and other people or whatever your niche may be. Once again, it doesn't only have to be about teaching. I recognize that a lot of people listening, that's likely what you're talking about is teaching, and that's very, very helpful. But know that you can offer it in a different way. Maybe it's a mindset shift about being a teacher that you could have on your blog and have a series about that. Like, what does it feel like to have this issue and how have I worked through that throughout the years? You can have different revenue streams that I think is really, really important. And that's something I want those of you who are on TPT and it might feel like, well, that wasn't very good news that you have to be in the top 800 to 1,000 sellers in order to be successful. So why am I doing this at all? I wouldn't think that. I wouldn't, because it's not your only answer. And in fact, I would discourage you from only having one source of revenue with anything that you do, because that's a risky business. If you're only utilizing keyword research and SEO, or if you are only marketing on social media, or if you are only on TPT, or even if you're only on your email list, though I think that's probably the least risky space to be, but you want to have different ways that you reach different people. Not everybody is going to be using TPT. Not everybody is going to be on Google. Not everybody has social media. In fact, I think it's, a lot of people are feeling very drained by social. And so making sure that you can be found in other areas as well. And so I think that's why it's a powerful tool for teachers, is to know you can have these multiple revenue streams, because with what you're creating for TPT, yes, you're creating a product that someone is going to purchase, but how can that product be repurposed into something that could be of free value to someone who's coming onto your blog? Could you go on a podcast to market yourself and to share something that you've learned that you might be selling that you can then have a direct link for within a podcast episode? Think outside the box. You are a creative. You are not just a teacher. You are not just a blogger. You are a content creator and you have a lot of gifts and a lot of skills. And as a teacher, I really do feel like you have a lot of grit and DIY already within you, because you have to. And so think about how you can leverage that and how you can use that expertise that you use every single day in the classroom and use it to create more engaging content in other ways that aren't going to leave you feeling so burned out. Another thing I want to say here is that one reason that I think it's so powerful is because I know during the school year, you guys are working sun up to sundown. And the thing about having a website, a blog, and I love that you use this term, Lauren, because this is what we say all the time, is that your blog is your home base. So when you said that, it just felt so in alignment with what Jennifer and I often say. But this continues to work for you, even if you aren't actively working on it. So if you have more time to work on things in the summers and batching out your content to go, for the fall semester, or maybe you take time over winter break to then focus on the spring semester and what you can have out there, knowing that it continues to work for you, even if you aren't always on it. So being consistent is important, but honestly, you don't have to be on it every single day in order to gain traction or to move. You just have to be consistent and engage, obviously, with the people that you're bringing in, which you can do with your email list, which is a really important way to stay connected. That's if we were to tell anybody the two places to build, it would be one, to have your website first and your blog, and second, to be focusing on building your email list so you can always be in contact with those people who you are finding, whether it's via a transaction from your TPT store, whether it's content from a blog post or a social media post. But making sure those people are turning into email subscribers, I think, is a really key piece that's just going to continue to drive engagement and hopefully revenue.
I love that. So let's talk about some first steps that teachers should take if they want to start a blog that's going to support their business, or even, like you said, be the home base for their business. What are some first steps that they should take?
Yeah, I think the first thing would just be to take a moment and think through what you really want to do with this business. Because, like we said, the possibilities are so endless. So get a really clear vision. Do I want this to replace my teaching income? Is this going to be a side business? What things am I okay with doing to earn money, and what things am I not okay with? Just really get in touch with your goals, your values, and what you're wanting to get from this, because you're going to hear a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of you should do this, you should do that. And you have to get really, really focused. And then once you know what you want from this, then I think you have to really define, like, okay, here is what I'm going to share. Here's who I'm talking to, and here's what I'm going to talk about. Because again, it's easy to get distracted and it's easy to get overwhelmed. So know exactly who you're going to be talking to. Are you going to serve other teachers? Are you going to serve parents? Are you going to go a completely different direction and have this just be a complement to what you know about teaching? So there's so many different avenues you could take. So make sure you know what that's going to be about. And then when you're really ready to get started, there's some foundational things that you need to put in place to make sure that you set yourself up for success. So once you know your goals, like if you want to earn passive income from ad revenue or things like that, there's certain ways you should set up your website. Like our belief is that it needs to be a self-hosted WordPress site, and you don't have to have a custom site. You can use an optimized theme, and that will get you up and running much quicker. And you want to just make sure you have all the right things set up on your website so that it creates a good user experience, it functions quickly, and that it sets you up for success. Then the second piece of that would be from day one, we suggest that you connect that website to an email marketing platform and you start collecting email addresses, as many as possible from every person that lands on your website. So have sign up forms and have, different ways you can test out getting people to sign up for your email list. There's lots of different plugins available for WordPress that can help you with this piece. Anything from like, hey, put your email address in and I'll send you this blog post, to, just freebies and all the different things that you can offer. So start working on that right away. And then just be really mindful of how you want to drive traffic and make sure that you have a couple different ways, like we talked about. Learn the basic techniques of SEO so that you can make sure that you're writing content that people are going to be searching for, because it's a lot of disappointment when you put all that work into creating content and nobody sees it. So make sure that you are doing some keyword research. You know what people are looking for. If Pinterest is going to be one of your drivers, you're looking on Pinterest. You know what keywords to use. You know what types of content to create. And you have a plan for sharing that. So just getting those basics in place from day one, it's going to save you a lot of frustration down the road because you're going to set yourself up for success. And it's never like, oh, I'm going to set this up and boom, everybody's going to show up. But if you set those things up on day one, then as you grow, you have it all in place and you can just start implementing the next step and the next step and the next step. You're set up and you're ready to go.
I love that. Now, with blogging comes, I think, one of the biggest roadblocks or one of the biggest hurdles. And that is, you mentioned earlier, Amy, that you see everything that teachers do and all of the things that they're doing. And time is just, by far one of the biggest roadblocks when it comes to, just dedicating time for that blog. Because if you want to do it and you want it to be successful, then you kind of have to do it right. So how can teachers balance blogging with their busy schedules to make it a sustainable part of their business? Not something that stresses them out, not something that feels like, a never ending item to do on their checklist. What is something they can do to make it sustainable?
So I think one of the first things is that you're going to want to get really clear. And this is whether or not you have been blogging already. Maybe you're not blogging. Maybe you just have your TPT store. I think something that I would encourage anybody listening to do is just ask like where you can make the most impact. So know who you're talking to, know how you're reaching them, and then know how you're going to make the most impact. That's where you're going to need to spend your time, especially during the school year when your time is already very, very limited. When you know what's actually driving the success, what's actually driving the traffic and driving the sales, then that's where you're going to want to spend your time. Because my guess is you're listening to this podcast not just because you want to do it for fun, but you're actually wanting to make some money because teachers are underpaid. And that's just the nature of the game. That's a whole nother podcast. So, but that's why you're here, is because you're wanting to generate more revenue for the things that you want to do in your life. But you don't want to teach all day and then have to do this all night just to be able to do the things in your life that you want to do. So where can you make the most impact? What is going to push the needle forward at the rate that you want to go? So that's number one. Know what's doing that. From there, what I would encourage you to do would be to create some systems and some workflows. So you look at your schedule, you look at what's happening, and whether you do this on like a weekly basis or a monthly basis, but you know what you need to get done in order to focus on the things that make the most impact, because you are not going to be able to do it all. So maybe that should be step one, is recognizing that you can't do it all. And so don't even try. It's okay. You don't have to, but you have to know like what really to focus on to where when you hear something new, you're not like, oh, yeah, that would be a really great idea if I did that. And you're like, nope. I have my blinders on right now. This is where the focus is for this amount of time because that's what's going to drive success. You have to be able to focus on things and see them to fruition for a period of time before we go adding a whole bunch of other things. So, this is something that, to be really honest with everybody, we did not have when we first began Spark. We used a lot of Post it notes, we used a lot of notebooks, and we thought that we were organized, but we weren't, to be honest. And we actually had somebody come on our podcast who talked about like a content management system. We got off the podcast, and Jennifer was like, setting it up today. We're making it happen. Like, we have to implement this into our business. And we did. So we use something called ClickUp in order to keep track of everything. So that is one thing I would highly suggest is making sure that you have an organized way that you know what your tasks are and then what needs to be done. Whether you use like Google Drive, we use ClickUp personally, but there's a lot of other things too. There is like Monday, there's Asana, there's Trello, but having an actual place that you log into that is not your email only, because that can cause some distraction. And then you know what needs to be done. So when we get up in the morning, we can go to ClickUp and we see the tasks. So let's use an example. We firmly believe in like batching your work. So if you know that you need to create, let's call it just digital products for the sake of this podcast. I need to create 5 digital products this month in order to put into my TPT store. Set due dates for those things, brainstorm those things. You're going to have a lot of tasks that go into the creation of that product. So I would break that down task by task by task and then assign due dates to those things. So then in the next month, when you know I need to make X amount of digital products as well, then you know, okay, this is what I do. This is the workflow and this is the amount of hours that it takes. What this does is just stops with any overwhelm of the task itself. Sometimes I think that we can get very caught up with the inability to move forward with a task simply because we do not know everything that needs to be done in order to complete the task. So if you've never written down like what all goes into creating a digital product, do that first. The next time you're creating a digital product, take out a notebook. We're not like anti-notebook, but take it out and write down everything that goes into that. So you know what system you need to create and then put that into your content management system. Then you know what you need to accomplish. Having those systems in place is going to give you freedom and it's going to lessen the overwhelm that you feel on a day-to-day basis. I'm telling you this because I've been there and I feel it. I think that initial like setup of any of the systems is kind of overwhelming, but I promise you once they are and once you know like this is what's on my plate. And when this is done, I can shut my computer. I don't need to continue like spinning my wheels and doing all of this stuff. That was the biggest change for us because, like many of you, we are moms. We have other things that we are involved in, but it's really easy when you're a content creator to just tell yourself, I can do one more thing. I can do one more thing. And honestly, you can, but should you? And that's the question is that we need to have some white space in our calendar to give to our families and to give to the things that we enjoy. So setting up those systems and workflows, I think is just really, really important. That would be step one for just kind of with your busy schedule. But I think something else I want to just highlight again, like we've already talked about, is repurposing your content. So when you are creating content, asking yourself, how can I use this in multiple different ways to where I work really hard one time and then I work really smart for the rest of the time, and utilizing that content in a lot of different ways. And I think that one, that can kind of ease the overwhelm of feeling like you're constantly having to create and do more because not everybody's seeing everything that you're creating. So know that like you might have somebody who could really gain a lot of information from you via your website, but they don't have a need for anything on a TPT site. You could be serving them with the content that you're creating via your digital products on your website, thinking about it in that way of repurposing to be able to reach a broader audience and serve them in different capacities, I think can also just help you with that overwhelm and knowing that once again, that's going to create the bigger impact.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about how teacher authors can find you guys, how they can work with you. So I know that you guys are coming to Teacher Seller Summit, which we're super excited about. Y'all are going to be presenting on why every teacherpreneur needs a blog and talking about selling digital products, coaching, building a brand, and why blogging is the smartest and most sustainable way to establish authority. We are so excited for this session at TSS. So I know that listeners can connect with you by purchasing their ticket to Teacher Seller Summit. We'll put a link to that down in the description. But how can teachers reach you and work with you? Because you guys have a couple of different ways that teacher authors can work with you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The easiest way is to listen to our podcast each and every week. We have a new episode that goes out every single Tuesday, so you can start learning about it. It's called the Ultimate Blog Podcast. And there's over like 175 episodes, so you can learn lots about blogging and all of that. We also have a membership. It is called the Ultimate Blog Roadmap. And this is our membership where we coach and train women to build blogging businesses. Just like Jennifer and I were talking about in the very beginning, this is the need that we found, is that a lot of women have a passion, they have an expertise, they have something they want to share. And a lot of times that just kind of stays inside, but they need some support to take it from that dream to doing. And that's what we do in the Ultimate Blog Roadmap, is really we come alongside women from all walks, all ages, and we help them take their ideas and build a website that's going to work for them, that has a really solid foundation, and then get to dream bigger. And in the roadmap, we have 3 calls every single month. That we have a beginner Q&A, an intermediate Q&A, and then we also bring in a guest expert every single month to coach and train on a topic. Sometimes that expert is Jennifer or I, and sometimes it is somebody that we bring in that we have met in the industry. But really the goal is to create a community of bloggers and content creators who are learning from each other. They're networking, they're growing, and it's a really safe place to learn, grow, and ask questions. We find that to be so important because there are things that are always going to change when you are an online content creator. And knowing where you can go for the information and for the support has been really important to us. So you can find out more about that membership at ultimateblogroadmap.com. But we will also give you a freebie that I think will be really helpful. And we've created this freebie for you. It is the Successful Blogger Checklist. And what it is it's actually just a series of podcast episodes that you can listen to, and hopefully you can just gain some insight there. I know that we've talked about some things beyond just a TPT store, and it can give you some knowledge there. And you can get that freebie at theultimateblogodpodcast.com/success.
And one of the things that I want listeners to think about when they're kind of digesting all of this information is that I remember when I was teaching, my principal at the time, she gave me probably the best advice. And I didn't even realize how great the advice was for just life in general. But I just finished up my first year of teaching, and she was kind of doing, employee evaluations, that kind of thing. And she said, one of the things that I worry about you, because I've come from a homeschool background. Like I was homeschooled. The first time I ever set foot in a public school was to do student teaching. So everything was totally new to me. Like it was a new world. And I wasn't used to the way things had always been done because I didn't know that. And she's like, one of the things that I'm worried about is that you're going to lose that looking at everything from a fresh perspective, and just like, you're going to start doing things the way that you're seeing everybody else do them. And I don't want you to do that. And I didn't realize that that was such great advice in life and then ultimately in business. Because I think so often we get wrapped up in, this is the way it's always been done. This is how I've seen successful people do this before. But what you guys are talking about is stepping out. I mean, we're talking about, old school Pat Flynn, talking about like going back to blogging as the home base and really kind of restructuring the way that you think about your business in general. And I think so many teacher authors, they get to this point where you start to feel like, if I'm going to diversify my business, it's going to have to look like having courses and having memberships and having a TPT store and having all of these things. Where really, if we start with this principle that you guys are talking about, is like your blog is your home base and it allows you to do other things for your business that are really in line with a lot of the things, same things you see people doing on social media, brand deals, ads, all of that kind of thing. But without having to show your face every single day and put your makeup on and get dressed and do all of that stuff. if you come at it, if you're listening and you're thinking, I've always sort of seen blogging in this one singular light, and I've always felt like I have to do things this one single way in order to make everything work, and that it's all about supporting my TPT business, I would challenge you to listen to some of the things that these ladies are saying, and maybe, go get that freebie, go get that checklist, and go listen to those podcast episodes and think, I'm going to start to think about my business maybe in a different way that other PT sellers are not thinking about. Because in doing that, you could really experience a really powerful shift, and things could start to feel less overwhelming when you have one thing as your home base versus trying to turn a TPT business into something that it's not. It's not not a membership. So really kind of thinking about it in that way. Ladies, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your knowledge, for sharing your expertise. I know many of our listeners are going to be at Teacher Seller Summit, and I know so many people are going to go rush to go download this freebie and to connect with you guys. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. And we're excited about the summit coming up too.